When a dedicated school counselor notices a 7-year-old girl collapse in hysterics every time the fire alarm sounds, she knows this isn't ordinary childhood fear. Emma's terror goes beyond startled tears. She becomes completely inconsolable, her screams echoing down the hallway long after other children have calmed. What begins as professional concern quickly becomes a desperate search for answers as the counselor discovers bruises hidden beneath long sleeves and a child too terrified to speak. Before we dive into the story, let us know where you're watching from in the comments below. And if you believe we all have a responsibility to protect children, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that matter. What started as routine counseling sessions soon became something much darker when Sarah Mitchell uncovered the first disturbing drawing that changed everything. Sarah Mitchell had been Westfield Elementary's guidance counselor for 12 years. She prided herself on creating a safe haven within her sunny office, where colorful bean bags and gentle conversation helped children navigate everything from playground disputes to family divorces. The walls were adorned with student artwork and inspirational quotes, carefully curated to make even the most anxious child feel welcome. Her desk housed an impressive collection of fidget toys and stress relievers, tools of her trade that had helped countless children through difficult moments. At 42, Sarah had the warm yet professional demeanor that made her approachable to both children and parents. Her brown hair was cut in a practical bob, and she dressed in comfortable, bright clothing that put kids at ease. Students knew Ms. Mitchell as someone who listened without judgment and helped without overreacting, a delicate balance she'd perfected over her years in educational psychology. Sarah's life outside school was quieter than many expected. Her apartment held more books than furniture, and most evenings found her curled up with psychological journals or the latest research on childhood development. Divorced 5 years prior, she had channeled her nurturing instincts into her work with children. Her empty apartment sometimes echoed with a loneliness she rarely acknowledged, but her purpose had never felt clearer than in those moments when she helped a child overcome their struggles. The new school year had begun 3 weeks ago, bringing the usual adjustment anxieties and scheduling hiccups. Sarah had already met with most of the new students, offering brief introductions and establishing herself as a resource. Only a few children had stood out as potentially needing ongoing support, and Emma Winters wasn't initially among them. Emma was a new second grader, recently moved to the district. During the first day orientation, Sarah had noticed her standing slightly apart from the other children, half hidden behind her mother's legs. The girl was small for 7, with dark blonde hair pulled into a tight ponytail and large hazel eyes that seemed to absorb everything around her. Sarah had made a mental note to check in with her, as she did with all transfer students, but nothing specific had raised immediate concerns. That changed during the first scheduled fire drill of the year. The alarm's piercing wail had barely begun when Sarah heard it, a scream that cut through the organized chaos of evacuating children. Following the sound, she found Emma collapsed in the hallway outside her classroom, hands clamped over her ears, body convulsing with sobs so violent they seemed to steal her breath. Her teacher, Ms. Peterson, knelt beside her, attempting to coax her toward the exit while maintaining order with the rest of her class. "I've got her," Sarah said, moving instinctively to the child's side. "Get the others outside." Ms. Peterson nodded gratefully, ushering her concerned students toward the exit. Sarah gently placed her hands on Emma's shoulders, feeling the girl's entire body trembling beneath her touch. "Emma, it's Ms. Mitchell from the counselor's office. You're safe. It's just a drill, sweetheart. The noise will stop soon." The child showed no sign of hearing her, locked in a terror so profound it seemed to transport her somewhere else entirely. Sarah lifted the small girl into her arms. She weighed almost nothing, and carried her outside, whispering reassurances that went unheard beneath the continued wailing of the alarm. Once outside, Sarah moved away from the gathered classes, finding a quiet spot beneath a tree where she sat, still cradling Emma. The child's screams had subsided to hiccuping sobs, but her eyes remained unfocused, seeing something beyond the sunny schoolyard. "You're safe, Emma. I promise you're safe," Sarah repeated, rubbing small circles on the girl's back. Gradually, as the alarm silenced and Principal Delaney announced the all-clear, Emma's breathing steadied. Her eyes focused on Sarah's face, confusion replacing terror. "Am I in trouble?" The whispered question broke Sarah's heart. "Not at all," Sarah assured her. "Sometimes loud noises are scary. Would you like to come to my office for a little while before going back to class?" Emma nodded, her small hand finding Sarah's as they walked back into the building. In the quiet of her office, Sarah offered Emma water and a fidget cube before sitting beside her rather than behind her desk. "Has a fire alarm ever scared you like that before?" Sarah asked gently. Emma's eyes immediately dropped to her lap. "I don't like loud noises." "Lots of people don't," Sarah agreed. "But I'd like to help you not feel so scared next time. Could you tell me what you were thinking about when the alarm went off?" Emma's shoulders hunched forward, her body seeming to fold in on itself. "I don't remember." Sarah recognized the deflection but didn't push. Instead, she reached for her art supplies. "Sometimes it's hard to talk about scary feelings. Would you like to draw instead?" For the next 20 minutes, Emma drew silently while Sarah occasionally commented or asked open-ended questions. The resulting picture showed a small stick figure huddled in what appeared to be a closet or small room, surrounded by angry red lines that Emma had pressed so hard into the paper that they tore through in places. "Can you tell me about your drawing?" Sarah asked, keeping her voice carefully neutral despite the concern blooming in her chest. "It's nothing," Emma mumbled, pushing the paper away. "Just a bad dream I had." Sarah made a note in her pad. "Dreams can be pretty powerful. Does this one come back a lot?" Emma shrugged, reaching for another piece of paper and deliberately changing the subject by asking if she could draw a cat instead. Sarah allowed the redirection, noting that the girl's hands had stopped shaking. After ensuring Emma was calm enough to return to class, Sarah walked her back, exchanging a meaningful glance with Miss Peterson. Later that day, Sarah sent an email requesting a meeting with Emma's teacher and documented the fire drill incident in her files. The following morning, Miss Peterson stopped by Sarah's office before classes began. "I'm worried about Emma," she said without preamble. "Yesterday wasn't the first time I've noticed something off. She flinches at sudden movements, never raises her hand, and yesterday I noticed bruising on her arm when her sleeve rode up during art." Sarah's concern deepened. "What kind of bruising?" "Finger marks," Miss Peterson said quietly. "I asked her about it casually, and she pulled her sleeve down so fast and said she fell off her bike. But Sarah, they were fingerprints. Have you met her parents yet?" Sarah asked, already reaching for Emma's file. "Just the mother at drop-off and pick-up. She seems tense, doesn't make eye contact, rushes off immediately. There's a father in the picture. He's listed as secondary contact, but I haven't seen him." Sarah nodded, making notes. "I'll set up a casual check-in with Emma today, maybe invite her to my lunch bunch group. And I think I'll call home, see if I can schedule a standard new student family meeting." Ms. Peterson squeezed Sarah's shoulder before leaving. "If anyone can get her to open up, it's you." Throughout the morning, Sarah reviewed Emma's limited file. The family had moved from a district 2 hours away. Emma's previous academic record showed average performance with a concerning number of absences. Medical records were sparse but included the mandatory vaccinations and a note about a hospital visit for a broken wrist last year, attributed to a fall from playground equipment. Sarah's experience made her stomach tighten. One incident might be nothing. A pattern demanded attention. She called the Winters home during her planning period, getting an answering machine. Her message was deliberately casual, welcoming the family to the district, offering resources for new students, requesting a meeting as part of routine integration. She followed it with an email containing similar content. At lunch, Sarah hosted her weekly lunch bunch, inviting Emma and 4 other students who could benefit from social skills practice in a smaller setting. Emma sat quietly, nibbling at her sandwich and speaking only when directly addressed. But Sarah noticed how the girl's eyes followed everything, how she seemed to catalog everyone's movements and reactions as if gathering crucial data. Toward the end of lunch, Sarah brought out emotion cards, asking each child to pick one that matched their feelings and share why. The other children chose happy, excited, Silly Emma hesitated before selecting worried. Would you like to share why you're feeling worried today, Emma? Sarah asked gently. My mom is sick, Emma said softly. She gets scared when I'm not home. Sarah kept her expression neutral while her mind raced. That sounds hard. Does she have other grown-ups who help her when she's not feeling well? Emma's eyes darted to the door. My dad takes care of us. Something in her tone made the simple statement feel ominous. Before Sarah could probe further, the bell rang. Emma was instantly on her feet. Lunch remains carefully packed away. As the children filed out, Sarah noticed Emma's cardigan had slipped up, revealing a yellowish bruise just above her wrist. When Sarah's eyes met hers, Emma yanked the sleeve down and hurried from the room. That afternoon, Sarah received a curt email reply from Mrs. Winters, explaining they were still settling in and didn't have time for meetings, but would be in touch if Emma had any issues. The deflection only heightened Sarah's concern. 2 days later, the school conducted an unannounced fire drill. Sarah was already moving toward the second-grade hallway before the alarm finished its first cycle. She found Emma where she expected, curled into a tight ball beneath her desk, hands clamped over her ears, her teacher trying unsuccessfully to coax her out. This time, when Sarah carried the hysterical child outside, she noticed something she'd missed before. As Emma's shirt rode up slightly in the back, revealed was what looked like a circular burn mark, about the size of a cigarette tip. Sarah's blood ran cold. After helping Emma calm down, Sarah made 2 decisions. First, she would see Emma for individual counseling sessions beginning immediately. Second, she would fast-track her investigation, protocol be damned. The next morning, Sarah gently explained to Emma that they would be meeting 3 times a week to help with her fear of loud noises. The girl didn't protest, her acquiescence itself a warning sign. Children typically resisted being singled out. In their first session, Sarah used play therapy techniques, setting out dollhouses and family figures, observing as Emma carefully arranged the dolls, placing the smallest one in a closet within the house, the mother doll in a bedroom, and the father doll looming in the doorway. Can you tell me about what's happening in your house? Sarah asked. The little girl is hiding, Emma said flatly. She has to be quiet or the loud noises will start. What kind of loud noises is she afraid of? Emma's hands stilled. Daddy noises. When he gets mad at Mommy. Sarah kept her voice gentle. What happens when Daddy gets mad? Emma's response was to slam the father doll against the mother doll repeatedly, the violence of the action shocking from such a quiet child. Then she placed the father doll beside the closet, opened the door, and said in a sing-song voice that raised goosebumps on Sarah's arms, come out, wherever you are. You know what happens to little girls who hide. Sarah documented everything, adding it to her growing file. Over the next week, Emma's drawings and play consistently revealed the same themes. Hiding, loud noises, a terrifying father figure, and a mother who couldn't protect her. Sarah noticed more bruises on Emma's upper arms, once on her neck partially hidden by her collar. Each time Sarah asked about them, Emma offered the same practiced responses about falling or playing too roughly. My daddy says I'm just clumsy, she explained when Sarah pointed out that was a lot of accidents. By the 10-day mark, Sarah had compiled enough documentation to justify a call to Child Protective Services. She consulted with Principal Delaney, who reviewed her notes and supported her decision. Emma mentioned her mother being sick, Sarah explained. I suspect domestic violence affecting both mother and child. The fire alarm reaction makes sense if there are frequent loud altercations at home. And those burns, she couldn't bring herself to finish the sentence. The call to CPS was straightforward but frustrating. Yes, they would investigate, but they were backlogged. Yes, they understood the concerns, but without immediate life-threatening danger, it might be several days. Sarah hung up feeling both relieved to have official involvement and terrified by the continued delay. That afternoon, Sarah was surprised when her office door opened during a planning period to reveal a thin, nervous-looking woman who introduced herself as Karen Winters, Emma's mother. The school keeps calling about meetings, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I thought I should come in person to explain we're doing fine. Emma's just adjusting to the move. Sarah invited her to sit, noting how the woman perched on the edge of the chair, eyes constantly moving to the door as if planning an escape route. Up close, Sarah could see faint yellowish bruising around Karen's wrist, similar to what she'd observed on Emma. "I'm so glad you came in," Sarah said warmly. "We just want to make sure Emma has all the support she needs during this transition. She's had a particularly strong reaction to our fire drills, and I've been helping her work through that fear." Karen's hand went to her throat. "She's always been sensitive to loud noises. Her father says she'll outgrow it." Sarah noted the reference. "Mr. Winters isn't with you today. He's working. He works a lot." The words came too quickly. "Look, Emma is fine. We're all fine. I should get going. I left work on my lunch break." "Of course," Sarah said smoothly. "But before you go, I wanted to ask, does Emma have a safe place at home? Many children who fear loud noises feel better having a comfort zone." Karen's face went completely blank for a moment before she replied, "Our home is perfectly safe, Ms. Mitchell. I don't appreciate the implication." "I wasn't implying anything," Sarah backpedaled slightly. "I'm just trying to understand how we can help Emma feel secure at school." Karen stood abruptly. "We handle our family matters privately. Thank you. Emma will adjust." As Karen turned to leave, Sarah noticed a dark bruise peeking from beneath her high neckline. Making a split-second decision, Sarah said softly, "Mrs. Winters, Karen, there are resources available if you or Emma need help. Of any kind." Karen froze with her hand on the doorknob. Without turning, she whispered, "You don't understand. He would find us." Then she was gone, the door clicking shut behind her. Sarah immediately documented the interaction and called CPS again, emphasizing the new information. This time, the caseworker promised to expedite the investigation. The next day, Emma didn't come to school. Sarah's stomach knotted with fear as she called the Winters home repeatedly, getting no answer. She was about to suggest that the principal request a wellness check when Emma appeared in her doorway during second period, looking exhausted. "My mom said to give you this," she said, holding out a note explaining their car had broken down that morning, causing Emma's tardiness. Sarah accepted the note, restraining herself from pulling the child into a hug. "I'm glad you're here now. Would you like to stay and draw for a few minutes before heading to class?" Emma nodded, settling into her usual spot. Instead of reaching for paper, however, she carefully removed her cardigan, revealing bruising that had definitely not been there the day before. Dark marks wrapping around both upper arms. "My daddy was mad that you talked to my mom," she said simply, meeting Sarah's eyes directly for the first time. "He said you're making trouble. He said next time it would be worse." Sarah's heart hammered in her chest. "Emma, did your father hurt you?" A small nod. "And your mom?" She tried to stop him. She couldn't. Emma's voice remained emotionless, a detachment that spoke volumes about how routine such violence had become. "Emma, listen to me very carefully," Sarah said, kneeling to the girl's level. "What your father is doing is wrong. It's not your fault, and it's not your mom's fault. But it needs to stop, and there are people who can help make it stop." "He said no one would believe us," Emma whispered. "He said they'd take me away forever and put mommy in jail." "That's not true," Sarah assured her. "You and your mom haven't done anything wrong. But I need to call some people who can help keep you both safe. Is that okay?" Emma hesitated before nodding slowly. "Can you make the loud noises stop too?" Sarah felt tears pricking at her eyes. "Yes, sweetheart. We're going to make all of it stop." With Emma's permission, Sarah took photos of her injuries, then called CPS from her office while Emma worked with the school nurse. This time, the caseworker promised immediate action. They would meet mother and daughter at the school within the hour. The CPS investigator, a compassionate but firm woman named Diane Rivera, arrived promptly. She interviewed Emma first, then spoke with Sarah about her observations. Together, they called Karen Winters, who initially panicked but agreed to come to the school when assured that police protection would be available if needed. Karen arrived looking even more exhausted than her daughter, a fresh bruise blooming on her cheekbone. When she saw Emma sitting safely with the school nurse, something in her crumpled. "I tried to protect her," she whispered to Sarah. "I thought I was doing the right thing, trying to keep him calm. I thought leaving would be worse." "You're both incredibly brave," Sarah told her. "And you're not alone anymore." Over the next hours, a safety plan emerged. Karen revealed the full extent of the abuse, physical violence that had escalated over years, initially directed only at her but increasingly focused on Emma as well. The fire drill reactions suddenly made terrible sense. Her husband would routinely set off their home smoke detector as punishment, forcing Emma into a closet while the alarm blared and he unleashed his rage on her mother. With police involvement, Karen and Emma were relocated to an emergency women's shelter that afternoon. A restraining order was filed, and Karen's husband was arrested at his workplace without incident. The formal statement Karen provided, combined with Emma's testimony and Sarah's detailed documentation, painted a damning picture that would keep him detained until trial. 2 weeks later, Sarah received permission from Karen to continue counseling Emma at school. The change in the girl was subtle but profound. She answered questions more readily, occasionally smiled, and had even made a tentative friendship with a classmate. "We're staying with my sister," Karen explained during a meeting in Sarah's office. "She lives across town, but we want Emma to finish the year here. The consistency seems important." Sarah nodded. "How are you both sleeping?" "Better," Karen admitted. "The nightmares still come, but less often. The therapy is helping." "All of it is helping," she hesitated before adding. "They're doing another fire drill this week, aren't they?" "Yes," Sarah confirmed. "But Emma and I have been preparing. We have a plan." When the day of the drill arrived, Sarah waited outside Emma's classroom. As the alarm sounded, she watched Emma flinch, then take a deep breath and stand with her classmates, hands pressed against her ears but feet moving steadily toward the exit. Sarah fell into step beside her, a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You're doing great," she murmured. "Remember our breathing." Outside, Emma stayed close to Sarah, trembling but not dissolving into panic. When the all-clear sounded, the girl looked up with something like wonder. "I didn't get lost in the scary place," she said. "I stayed here." "You did," Sarah agreed. "I'm so proud of you." A month passed then too. Emma continued therapy both at school with Sarah and outside with a trauma specialist. Karen found a job that allowed her to be home when Emma finished school, and with the help of victim services, they located an affordable apartment of their own. Emma's father remained in custody, denied bail due to the severity of the charges and previous flight risk behavior. By the end of the semester, Emma had advanced from drawing dark, frightening scenes to creating images filled with color. Still serious, still processing trauma, but no longer trapped in the moment of terror. She spoke more in class, raised her hand occasionally, and had started attending a children's support group at the Women's Center. Sarah kept their regular counseling appointments, watching with professional satisfaction and personal joy as Emma slowly reclaimed her childhood. During their last session before winter break, Emma presented Sarah with a drawing. "It's us," she explained, pointing to 2 figures standing outside a building with a red fire alarm clearly visible. "You're helping me be brave." Sarah blinked back tears. "You were already brave, Emma. Incredibly brave." After Emma left, Sarah added the drawing to her file, now thick with progress notes and session summaries. The story was far from over. Recovery from trauma was a long road, but the direction was clear. Emma and her mother had escaped the cycle of violence, were receiving appropriate support, and building a new life free from fear. The next morning, Sarah arrived at her office to find Principal Delaney waiting. "The district's developing a new trauma-informed training program for all staff," he explained. "After what happened with Emma, we realized how many warning signs are missed because people don't know what to look for. We'd like you to help develop the protocol." Sarah thought of Emma's drawing, the brave girl facing her fears, and nodded. "I'd be honored. The more eyes watching out for these kids, the better." Later that afternoon, as Sarah packed up for the holiday break, her phone chimed with a text message from Karen Winters. A photo of Emma smiling tentatively beside a small Christmas tree in their new apartment. The first genuine smile Sarah had seen on the child's face. The caption read simply, "Thank you for helping us find our voices and our safety." Sarah felt a familiar pressure behind her eyes. In 12 years of counseling, she'd helped hundreds of children through academic struggles, social conflicts, and family transitions. But cases like Emma's, where intervention literally saved lives, those were the ones that reminded her why she had chosen this path. As she turned off her office light, Sarah made a mental note to add Emma's case. Anonymized, of course, to the training materials. Not for recognition, but because Emma's story mattered. Because every child deserved safety, and every adult who worked with children needed to recognize the signs when that safety was compromised. The district's new protocol would be called Listening When Children Cannot Speak. Because Emma had been telling her story all along, not with words, but with terror at fire alarms, with drawings of closets and angry red lines, with bruises she couldn't explain. Sarah had simply learned to listen in the language Emma could use. The following semester brought a new crop of students and concerns, but Sarah kept the drawing pinned to her bulletin board where she could see it daily. A reminder that observation, documentation, and action could literally save lives. Emma continued to improve, gradually developing the confidence that trauma had stolen. Her mother bloomed too, finding strength she hadn't known she possessed. 3 months after the initial intervention, during a particularly challenging day, Sarah received an envelope in her school mailbox. Inside was a note from Karen and a picture from Emma, this one showing 3 figures, Emma, her mother, and a smaller child holding their hands. Emma's therapist suggested she draw her future, Karen's note explained. She said she wants to help scared kids someday. Just like Ms. Mitchell did, your courage gave us ours. Thank you will never be enough. Sarah placed the new drawing beside the first one, noticing the progression from fear to hope. In that silent comparison, Sarah understood. She hadn't just helped stop the darkness, she had helped preserve a future. As another school year began, the district implemented its new training program. Teachers, bus drivers, cafeteria workers, anyone who interacted with students, learned the subtle signs of abuse and neglect, the proper documentation procedures, and the vital importance of timely reporting. The program emphasized that intervention wasn't just a professional obligation but a moral imperative. During the presentation, anonymized versions of Emma's drawings served as powerful visual examples of how children communicate trauma when words fail them. Sarah watched her colleagues' faces register shock, then determination as they realized how crucial their observations could be. Recovery wouldn't be instant, for Emma or for the many children like her still waiting to be seen. But the foundation for safety had finally been laid, allowing the slow work of healing to begin. The path ahead held challenges, but for the first time, the possibility of sunlight felt real and attainable. At the end of the training, Principal Delaney shared a final statistic. Since implementing heightened awareness protocols, their district had identified and provided intervention for 5 additional children in concerning situations. 5 children who might otherwise have continued suffering in silence. This isn't about becoming amateur detectives, Sarah emphasized in her closing remarks. It's about truly seeing the children in front of us, recognizing when something isn't right, and having the courage to speak up. Sometimes, you're the only one who will. As she gathered her materials, Sarah's phone lit up with a text from Karen. Emma proudly showing off an award she'd received for Most Improved in her therapy group. The child's smile was broader now, more confident. Real. Sarah smiled back at the image, her heart full. In that quiet moment, surrounded by colleagues newly committed to protecting their most vulnerable students, Sarah felt the weight and wonder of the ripple effect one intervention could create. Emma was healing. Her mother was thriving. And because of their story carefully shared, other children would find safety sooner. Thanks for watching till the end. If you enjoyed the story, give this video a like if you haven't already, and subscribe for more. When a 4th grade teacher notices a new student who refuses to remove a tattered blanket draped around her shoulders despite warm weather and the school dress code, something about her fierce protection of the worn fabric begins to trouble her. What began as a curious classroom quirk would soon reveal a heartbreaking situation that had been overlooked by multiple adults and systems meant to protect the most vulnerable children. Before we dive into the story, let us know where you're watching from in the comments below. And if you believe that sometimes the smallest details can reveal the biggest truths, hit that like button and subscribe for more. Catherine Morgan had been teaching 4th grade at Oak Ridge Elementary for 9 years. At 36, her natural warmth and perceptive nature had earned her a reputation as one of the most effective educators in the diverse suburban school district. With her shoulder-length blonde hair typically fastened in a simple clip and thoughtful blue eyes that radiated genuine interest in each student's well-being, Ms. Morgan, Ms. Kate to her 9- and 10-year-olds, created a classroom environment where even the most hesitant children eventually flourished. Beyond simply teaching academic content, Catherine believed deeply in the power of education to provide stability and support for children facing challenges outside school walls, often serving as an advocate for students whose needs extended beyond the classroom. Her teaching space reflected this philosophy, walls adorned with both academic content and inspirational messages about resilience and growth, flexible seating arrangements that accommodated different learning styles, and a special peace corner where students could regulate emotions when feeling overwhelmed. The room smelled pleasantly of the essential oil diffuser she occasionally used to create a calming atmosphere during high-stress periods like testing weeks. Most notable was her classroom library, carefully curated to include books featuring diverse characters overcoming various challenges, many reflecting situations her students might be experiencing in their own lives. Catherine lived in a comfortable home about 20 minutes from the school with her husband David, an architect whose creative problem-solving often complemented her approach to educational challenges, and their 2 middle school children. The family had moved to the area a decade earlier when Catherine received her teaching position, and they had quickly become active community members, regularly volunteering for local initiatives addressing food insecurity and housing instability, issues that affected many families in their economically diverse district. This community involvement gave Catherine valuable insights into the struggles many of her students faced beyond school hours. Principal Robert Chen valued Catherine's contributions to Oak Ridge Elementary beyond just academic outcomes. "You see teaching as both instruction and advocacy," he had noted during her most recent evaluation. "The progress your students make in reading and math is impressive, but equally important is how you help them develop resilience and connect their families with community resources." Catherine had accepted the compliment graciously, though privately she considered such advocacy an essential element of effective teaching rather than something extraordinary. School counselor Melissa Walker had become one of Catherine's closest colleagues at Oak Ridge. They frequently collaborated on supporting students facing challenges outside the classroom, with Catherine often being the first to notice subtle behavioral changes that warranted deeper investigation. Melissa appreciated Catherine's insights, often noting that her patient observation and genuine connection with children created trust that made her classroom a place where hidden struggles sometimes came to light. There had been discussions at recent staff meetings about the increasing strain on local housing resources. Property values in the district had risen dramatically over the past year, resulting in more families facing eviction or living in temporary accommodations as affordable housing options diminished. The school had been working to identify and support these students, though stigma and shame often prevented families from disclosing housing instability until crisis points were reached. One Wednesday afternoon in late September, Catherine had encountered an unfamiliar woman speaking intently with Principal Chen in the main office. The woman, who she later learned was Maria Santos, the newly appointed director of the county's Family Housing Initiative, had greeted Catherine warmly when introduced, asking thoughtful questions about how teachers identified students who might be experiencing housing insecurity. "We're trying to develop better early intervention models," Maria had explained. "Too often, families don't connect with resources until they're already homeless. If we can identify warning signs earlier, we might be able to help stabilize their housing situations before they lose their homes entirely." This perspective resonated deeply with Catherine's own observations about how housing challenges affected her students' learning and well-being, and she'd left the brief interaction feeling cautiously hopeful about potential new resources that might benefit vulnerable families in their community. Autumn had settled over the suburban community of Oak Ridge, bringing crisp mornings and golden afternoons that transformed the elementary school's maple-lined playground into a canvas of red and orange. The school itself, a well-maintained two-story building constructed in the early 2000s, served approximately 500 students from diverse socio-economic backgrounds. Inside, classrooms hummed with the familiar rhythm of learning and social development that marked the school year now fully underway after the adjustment period of the first few weeks. It was during this season of settling in that Catherine first began to really notice something unusual about Sofia Martinez, a 9-year-old girl who had joined her class 3 weeks after the start of school. The child was small for her age, with solemn dark eyes that seemed to absorb everything while revealing very little, and long black hair often pulled back in a simple ponytail. Her enrollment paperwork indicated she lived with her mother and younger brother, having recently moved to the district following what was vaguely described as changes in family circumstances. What stood out most about Sofia, however, wasn't her mid-year transfer or quiet demeanor, it was her blanket. But nothing could prepare Catherine for the mystery that would unfold around Sofia's faded blue blanket. The first time Catherine really took notice was during a warm afternoon in early October. While other children had removed sweaters and light jackets as the classroom heated up, Sofia kept a worn, medium-sized blanket draped around her shoulders like a shawl. Though clearly once a cheerful blue with cartoon characters printed on it, the blanket was now faded and frayed at the edges, suggesting years of use. When Catherine gently suggested that Sofia might be more comfortable without the extra layer, the girl's reaction was immediate and disproportionate. "No, thank you," she had said quietly but firmly, small hands clutching the edges of the blanket tighter around her shoulders. "I need to keep it with me." The intensity of her response, coupled with the flash of anxiety in her eyes, triggered Catherine's professional concern. In her experience, when children demonstrated such strong attachment to comfort objects at an age when most had outgrown them, it sometimes indicated significant emotional distress or trauma. "That's okay, Sofia," she had assured her calmly. "You can keep your blanket if it helps you feel comfortable in your new school." The relief that flooded the girl's face at this accommodation registered as another potential red flag to Catherine's trained eye, one she mentally filed away for further observation. Over the following weeks, the pattern continued unbroken. Sofia wore the blanket draped around her shoulders every single day, during lessons, at lunch, on the playground, even during physical education when it clearly impeded her movements. The blanket, already worn when Catherine first noticed it, was becoming increasingly soiled and tattered. Most concerning to Catherine was Sofia's evident anxiety whenever any activity threatened to require the blanket's removal or when other children questioned why she always wore it. "Sofia, your blanket is getting pretty worn out," Catherine mentioned casually during independent reading time, when she could speak with her privately. "Would you like me to ask your mom about washing it, or maybe bringing a different one to school sometimes?" The girl's reaction was subtle but telling. A quick glance up with an expression of alarm before looking back down at her book. "No, thank you," she said softly. "My mom is really busy, and I need this 1 inch. This response heightened Catherine's concern, particularly the reference to her mother being too busy, sometimes a child's way of covering for more complex family challenges. She began paying closer attention to other potential indicators of well-being. She noticed that Sofia often seemed tired, occasionally nodding off during quiet reading time. Her clothing, while clean, was sometimes mismatched or slightly too small. Most troubling was how the girl hoarded food from lunch, wrapping items in napkins and slipping them into her backpack when she thought no one was watching. "I'm becoming concerned about Sofia Martinez," Catherine told Melissa during their weekly check-in meeting, approximately 4 weeks after Sofia had joined her class. "The blanket is just one piece of a concerning pattern." She detailed her observations, the unwavering attachment to the blanket regardless of temperature or activity, signs of possible food insecurity, apparent fatigue, and clothing that suggested limited resources. "I've tried calling the contact number on her enrollment forms twice, but it goes to voicemail and no one returns my calls. And she gets very anxious whenever I mention communicating with her mother." "That is concerning," Melissa agreed, making notes in her file. "How is she academically?" "That's another red flag," Catherine replied. Her transfer records showed she was performing at grade level at her previous school, but she's struggling with basic concepts now and seems to have difficulty concentrating. The decline in such a short period suggests something significant may have changed in her home situation. Melissa reviewed Sophia's enrollment information. The address listed is in the Pinewood Apartments. That's concerning in itself. There have been reports of serious maintenance issues there, and I know several families have been displaced due to unsafe conditions. Let me see if I can do some outreach. Over the next week, Catherine continued her careful observation while Melissa attempted to connect with Sophia's mother. The counselor's findings were troubling. The phone number listed in Sophia's records had been disconnected, and when Melissa visited the apartment complex, the manager informed her that no one by the name Martinez was currently listed as a tenant, though he acknowledged substantial turnover and incomplete records. Something isn't adding up, Melissa told Catherine during a follow-up conversation. I'm going to check with transportation to see how Sophia is getting to and from school. That might give us some insight into her living situation. The transportation inquiry revealed another piece of the puzzle. Sophia was listed as being dropped off and picked up by a parent, not taking the bus. However, morning staff had observed her walking to school from the direction of the community park several times, not from the apartment complex listed as her address. This information, suggesting possible housing instability or even homelessness, intensified Catherine's determination to understand what was happening with her quiet student. If the family was experiencing housing insecurity, numerous resources could be mobilized to help them, but only if the situation was properly identified. After consulting with both Melissa and Principal Chun, Catherine developed a sensitive approach to learning more. Rather than directly questioning Sophia about her living situation, which might increase her anxiety or shame, she would create natural opportunities to build trust while looking for appropriate moments where Sophia might feel comfortable sharing more about her circumstances. But nothing could have prepared Catherine for what she would discover the following Monday, exactly 31 days after Sophia had first arrived in her classroom. The revelation came during a routine art project focused on family and community. Students were creating collages representing important aspects of their lives, using magazines, construction paper, and drawings. As Catherine circulated around the classroom offering assistance, she noticed Sophia struggling to cut a piece of paper while keeping her blanket secured around her shoulders. "Would you like some help with that cutting, Sophia?" Catherine asked gently. "It's hard to use scissors while holding your blanket at the same time." Sophia nodded hesitantly. "Can you hold my blanket just for a minute while I cut this? But please don't take it away." This small request, the first time Sophia had willingly allowed anyone to touch her blanket, represented a significant moment of trust. Catherine carefully took the edges of the blanket, supporting its weight while Sophia used both hands to cut her paper. As she held the worn fabric, Catherine noticed something she hadn't been able to see before, what appeared to be writing on the underside of the blanket, visible through the thinning fabric. "You've done a great job on your cutting," Catherine praised, carefully returning the blanket to Sophia's shoulders. "Would you like to tell me about what you're adding to your collage?" As they discussed the project, Catherine's mind was working to process what she had glimpsed. The writing had appeared to be a name and phone number, information that seemed unusual to find on a child's blanket. Could it be a laundry marking from a shelter? Or something else entirely? Later that day, during physical education when Sophia was struggling to participate in activities, while maintaining her grip on the blanket, Catherine saw an opportunity to learn more. "Sophia," she suggested kindly, "would it be okay if I held your blanket while you do the obstacle course? I'll stand right here where you can see me the whole time, and you can have it back as soon as you're done." After a moment's hesitation, Sophia nodded, reluctantly handing over her precious blanket with visible anxiety. Catherine held it carefully, making sure Sophia could see it was safe while she navigated the obstacle course. With the girl's attention focused on the physical activity, Catherine was able to discreetly examine the underside of the blanket more thoroughly. What she discovered caused her to gasp audibly, drawing curious glances from nearby students. Hastily composing herself, she smiled reassuringly at Sophia, who was looking back with concern. Written in permanent marker on the underside of the blanket was not just a name and phone number as she had initially thought, but a detailed message. My name is Sofia Martinez. My mom is Maria Martinez. If you find me, please call 555-0189. We are staying in the blue tent at Oak Ridge Park because we lost our home. Please help us. The message, clearly written in an adult hand but concealed on the underside of the blanket a child would rarely part with, represented a desperate attempt by a mother to seek help while maintaining dignity. A silent cry for assistance that would only be discovered if someone paid close enough attention. The realization struck Catherine with both clarity and urgency. Sofia and her family weren't just experiencing housing instability. They were actively homeless, likely living in the community park less than a mile from the school. The blanket wasn't merely a comfort object. It was carrying a message, a plea for help hidden in plain sight in the hope that eventually someone would notice. When Sofia completed the obstacle course and returned for her blanket, Catherine smiled naturally while her mind raced with how to proceed. This discovery required immediate action, but approaching it incorrectly could cause the family to disappear out of fear or shame, potentially into an even less secure situation. "You did a great job on that obstacle course," Catherine praised, carefully returning the blanket to Sofia. "I'm so impressed with how you balanced on the beam." After class, Catherine immediately contacted Melissa and Principal Chun, sharing her discovery and her concerns about how to best approach the situation. Both agreed that hasty action could backfire, while inaction was equally unacceptable given the vulnerability of a family living outdoors as colder weather approached. "Let me reach out to Maria Santos at the Housing Initiative," Principal Chun suggested. She specifically mentioned new approaches for helping families experiencing homelessness who might be reluctant to engage with traditional services. This seems like exactly the kind of situation she was describing. While that connection was being established, Catherine and Melissa developed a gentle approach to confirm their understanding of Sofia's situation. The counselor would meet with Sofia under the pretense of checking in with all transfer students, creating a safe space where the girl might feel comfortable sharing more about her circumstances if approached with sensitivity. During this conversation, guided by Melissa's trauma-informed techniques, Sofia eventually confirmed what the message on her blanket had revealed. Her mother, younger brother, and she had been evicted from their apartment 2 months earlier when the building was sold to a developer. After staying briefly with friends and then in a motel until their money ran out, they had been living in a tent at the community park for nearly 3 weeks. "Mom says it's just for a little while," Sofia explained, her voice small but matter-of-fact. "She goes to work at the hospital cafeteria every day, but we need to save more money for an apartment. She wrote the message on my blanket because she said sometimes adults want to help but don't know how." The vulnerability and resilience in this statement. A child calmly explaining homelessness while holding on to hope that it was temporary, moved both educators deeply. Sofia's mother had clearly been working to maintain stability through school attendance while searching for solutions to their housing crisis, using the blanket as an innovative if desperate attempt to seek assistance without openly declaring their situation. With this confirmation, a carefully coordinated intervention was developed, focusing on immediate support while preserving the family's dignity. Maria Santos from the County Housing Initiative was brought in, bringing expertise in trauma-informed approaches to family homelessness. Rather than sending officials to the park, which might frighten the family, Catherine would send a note home with Sofia explaining that the school had resources to help families and inviting her mother to a meeting the following morning. "We need to approach this from a position of respect and partnership," Santos advised. "This mother has been working, keeping her children in school, and actively seeking help through the blanket message. She's doing everything possible in an impossible situation." The next morning, Maria Martinez arrived at the school, visibly exhausted but carrying herself with dignity. In a private meeting with Catherine, Melissa, Principal Chun, and Santos, she explained their situation in more detail. Following eviction, they had exhausted their savings on motel stays while she searched for affordable housing, eventually resorting to the tent when no options materialized despite her continued employment. She had written the message on Sofia's blanket after seeing a news story about a family connected with help through a similar approach in another state. "I didn't know what else to do," she explained, fighting tears. "The shelters are full, and many won't take my son because he's 10. They consider him too old for women's shelters but too young for men's facilities. I couldn't separate my children. So we stayed together at the park, and I kept hoping someone would notice the message and help us find a real place to stay. The comprehensive support mobilized in response to Catherine's discovery exceeded anything Maria had dared to hope for. Through Santos's program, the family was immediately placed in transitional housing, a small apartment specifically designated for families experiencing homelessness while working toward permanent housing solutions. Additional resources addressed other needs: food assistance, case management services, enrollment in an affordable housing waiting list, financial literacy support, and counseling for the children to address the trauma of homelessness. For Catherine, the days following her discovery were both challenging and affirming. She had noticed what others had missed, persisted when faced with obstacles, and potentially changed the trajectory of an entire family's future. The knowledge that Sophia had been sleeping in a tent while diligently attending school and trying to maintain normalcy weighed heavily on her heart. Yet the rapid mobilization of effective support demonstrated how communities could respond when vulnerability was met with compassion rather than judgment. "You did everything right," Melissa assured her during a reflective conversation after school. "You noticed the pattern, you built trust with Sophia, and when you discovered the situation, you responded with sensitivity instead of alarm. That approach is why the family remained engaged rather than disappearing out of fear or shame." The case had significant ripple effects throughout the school and district. Principal Chun implemented enhanced training for all staff on recognizing signs of housing insecurity, with Catherine's observations of Sophia's behaviors serving as educational examples. The school's intake procedures were modified to include more supportive questions about housing stability, framed in non-stigmatizing language that encouraged families to disclose challenges before reaching crisis points. Most significantly, Maria Santos used the case to advocate for expanding the county's transitional housing program, highlighting how the family's situation demonstrated gaps in existing homelessness prevention systems. A mother working consistently while living in a tent with school-age children represented a compelling argument for additional resources targeting the growing population of working families experiencing homelessness despite employment. By December, approximately 2 months after Catherine had discovered the message on Sophia's blanket, the changes in the girl were remarkable. With stable housing, adequate food, and support for the whole family, Sophia's academic performance had returned to grade level. She participated actively in classroom activities, formed friendships with classmates, and most tellingly, no longer felt the need to wear her blanket throughout the school day, though she kept it safely in her backpack, now a symbol of the resourcefulness that had ultimately connected her family with help. During the school's winter concert, Catherine watched with pride as Sophia confidently performed with her classmates, her mother and brothers seated in the audience. After the performance, Maria approached Catherine with a small gift bag. "We can never thank you enough," she said, emotion evident in her voice. "Not just for finding my message, but for how you handled it with respect for our dignity. You changed everything for us." Inside the bag was a framed photograph of Sophia, her mother, and brother standing in front of their transitional apartment, all smiling. On the frame was inscribed, "Sometimes angels look like teachers who pay attention." The impact of Catherine's discovery extended far beyond Sophia's family. The case had highlighted critical gaps in how schools identified and supported students experiencing homelessness, leading to district-wide policy changes. A formal partnership was established between the school system and the County Housing Initiative, creating expedited pathways for families identified as experiencing housing instability before they reached the point of literal homelessness. Maria Martinez became an advocate within this new system, eventually securing part-time employment with the Housing Initiative as a peer navigator helping other families navigate resources. Her first-hand experience made her uniquely effective at building trust with families reluctant to seek formal assistance due to pride, shame, or fear of system involvement. By spring, approximately 6 months after Catherine had gasped at the message hidden on Sophia's blanket, the county had secured additional funding to expand transitional housing units specifically for families with school-age children. The program, informally dubbed the Blanket Message Project, by staff familiar with its catalyst, prioritized maintaining children's school stability while helping families address the underlying causes of their housing insecurity. For Sophia, the transformation extended beyond improved living conditions to renewed confidence and emotional security. With stability at home, her natural intelligence and curiosity flourished in the classroom. Catherine observed with satisfaction how the girl who had once hidden behind a blanket now eagerly participated in class discussions and activities, her previous withdrawal replaced by appropriate childhood enthusiasm. During a parent-teacher conference in April, Maria shared news that represented the culmination of their journey. After 6 months in transitional housing, saving consistently and repairing credit issues, they had been approved for a subsidized apartment through the Affordable Housing Program. The 2-bedroom unit would provide long-term stability, allowing the children to remain in their school and Maria to continue building her career path through additional training programs offered by the hospital where she worked. When I wrote that message on Sophia's blanket, I felt so desperate, Maria confessed. I didn't know if anyone would ever see it or care if they did. Now we have a real home, I'm advancing at work, and most importantly, my children feel secure again. All because you took the time to really see what was happening with Sophia. A year after Catherine had first noticed a quiet girl who never removed her blanket, she witnessed a perfect illustration of the transformation during the school's spring festival. Sophia, now thoroughly integrated with her peers and thriving academically, approached Catherine with a handmade card. Inside was a drawing of a blanket with a simple message: "Thank you for reading between the lines." The following September, as Catherine welcomed a new class of 4th graders, she carried with her deeper awareness of how small details might signal larger struggles. The photo of Sophia's family held a place of honor on her desk, a daily reminder of why looking beyond surface behaviors to understand root causes mattered so profoundly. When a new student appeared consistently hungry despite claiming to have eaten breakfast, Catherine noticed immediately, not with alarm or assumption of neglect, but with the appropriate professional attention such patterns warranted in light of her experience with Sophia. Recovery hadn't been instant for Sophia or her family. The trauma of homelessness, even for a relatively short period, had created emotional wounds that required ongoing support to fully heal. The systemic issues that had contributed to their housing crisis, insufficient affordable housing, inadequate wages despite full-time employment, and gaps in safety net programs, remained challenges within their community. Yet the progress, while incomplete, represented meaningful steps toward better protection for vulnerable families. The story that had begun with a teacher's concern about a student's blanket had transformed into something unexpected, not just an intervention that helped one family, but a catalyst for community-wide changes that would benefit many families facing similar challenges. As Catherine guided her new students through beginning-of-year activities, she remained ever mindful that sometimes the most important teaching moments had nothing to do with curriculum standards and everything to do with seeing the humanity and struggles of the children in her care. Not an ending, but a new beginning for Sophia, for her more stable family, and for a community now better equipped to address housing insecurity before it escalated to park encampments and hidden messages on children's blankets. A reminder that healing becomes possible when caring professionals pay attention to the small details that speak volumes, and when systems respond not just with temporary fixes, but with comprehensive support for families facing complex challenges. Thanks for watching till the end. If you enjoyed the story, give this video a like if you haven't already, and subscribe for more.